I want to say good evening to everyone. My name is Catherine Sullivan DiCarlo, and I am Vice President of Admissions and Marketing at Chapel Haven Schleifer Center. And we really are delighted to have you join us tonight as we explore the new Connecticut ABLE accounts. And this is a brand new development, and we want to find out more about how it can benefit not only our families, but all families. And so I'd like to thank our two presenters, and they will be Andrew Comero of Planning Across the Spectrum and Renaud Levesque, who I think goes by Ray, who is the Deputy Chief Investment Officer for the Office of the State Treasurer, Sean Wooden. And we're really delighted to have both presenters with us. I also want to thank from my team, Christy Chandler and Marissa Witkowski-Eldred. And so I'm just going to give you a quick overview about Chapel Haven Schleifer Center, and then we're going to get into our presentation. So as we're going along, if you have questions while our presenters are speaking, you can use the chat feature, should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Also, here are the contacts for us, admission@chapelhaven.org or Andrew at planningacrossthespectrum.com. And a final note that we are recording the session because we've had a number of people who can't make it tonight and would like to have the information. Okay, so Chapel Haven Schleifer Center, that's a mouthful, but that's who we are. We're an award-winning nonprofit based in Westville, which is a section of New Haven, Connecticut. We also have a satellite campus in Tucson, Arizona called Chapel Haven West. And just to boil it down to a quick mission statement, we serve adults with a wide variety of profiles, and our goal is to help them learn how to live independently. And we serve about 250 people. You can learn more about us. There's our website at chapelhaven.org. And I did want to mention some upcoming events that might be of interest to our viewers tonight. We are doing a student panel with our Asperger's Syndrome Adult Transition Program called Stories from the Road. That'll be on Zoom Wednesday, December 2nd at 5:30. And then we have a very wonderful partnership with the Yale Child Study Center. And so we're going to be doing a two-parter. The first part will be about the genetics of autism on December 3rd at noon, and that'll be about an hour. And then the second part will be about medication, mental health, and autism with Dr. Roger Joe, and that'll be the following week at noon. And then if you're really jazzed up after tonight and you want to learn more about us, we will be having our next virtual open house on Saturday, January 16th. So there's my email, cdicarlo@chapelhaven.org, and let me know if you're interested in any of those things. All right. So next, I'm going to turn this over to Andrew Comero to give us the big picture about why ABLE and why ABLE accounts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go to the next slide. Perfect. So again, one of the things that I found, and I've done a lot of ABLE account presentations around the state, done some with around the country, ABLE ambassador for 2020 with the ABLE National Resource Center. I was invited along with Ray in order to, at the press conference with the release of the ABLE accounts. And one of the things that I found when I started presenting ABLE accounts was we have to talk about the reason to consider opening an ABLE account. So as excited as we are that Connecticut has an ABLE account, and that's why Ray's here today, it did want to take a few minutes to explain some of the reasons to open an ABLE account. Because on one hand, yes, it's good for everyone to save money, and saving money is never a bad thing. But there's also the part about government benefits and services. So it's not necessarily a government benefit presentation, but I have found it's good to do just a real brief overview. So I really like to simplify government benefits into three parts, mainly two. And again, this is a very condensed version. There's money, which is pretty self-explanatory. Somebody gives me money, or it's I pay money to the state treasurer's office for my taxes. There's medical insurance, and that's Medicare, Medicaid, and then there's also housing. So when it comes to Social Security, there are two main Social Security. There is Social Security Disability, SSDI, and there's supplemental Social Security. And so normally SSDI pays benefits for disabled workers who are unable to work, regardless of their income and resources. And that is income from other investments or real rental property. And SSI is anyone who is unable to work, but it's limited income and resources. And the reason I mention these is because the relationship. So there's SSI means Medicaid. So a lot of times if people say they're receiving Social Security, rather than ask them which Social Security they're on, I will ask them if they're on Medicaid or Medicare. Again, short of seeing documents, it can be a good way to help answer the question. SSI is the gateway to Medicaid. So in order to qualify for SSI, you can't have more than 2,000 to your name. Connecticut is something of a technicality called a 209B state. That is the reason why our Medicaid limit is $1,600. For all intents and purposes, you can't have more than $1,600 into a bank account. That is one of the reasons why I find it's a good starter for mentioning, well, an ABLE account is exempt from that. So an SSI and Medicaid. Medicaid is also Husky. Husky A, C, or D are all versions of Medicaid. So, and again, just because you get SSI doesn't automatically mean you get Medicaid in Connecticut, but essentially it does. Most of the time when an individual turns 18 is when they'll apply for Medicaid and get approved. Prior to 18, the assets and income of the parent are counted that of the child, which really means, again, the income's really low, the asset limit. I find very much, generally speaking, most children are not eligible for SSI prior to 18. SSDI and Medicare. So Medicare is not just for the elderly, right, which is not that elderly, it's only 65. Medicare is also for those who are disabled and who qualify for SSDI. Now, you need to be on SSDI for 2 years in order to qualify for Medicare. There are certain exceptions, but for the most part, it's 2 years. One other important note is there's something called the DAC, Disabled Adult Child Benefit. Doesn't the government have such great terms for describing things? And what this means is when a parent passes away, retires, becomes disabled themselves, the child, even if they've never worked, will get to receive what looks like traditional Social Security, SSDI, in addition to then qualifying for Medicare. So they can be on Medicare and Medicaid and be getting an we'll call it SSDI payment. It's called the DAC. It's very, very common. But one of the most important benefits, if not the most important benefit, is what comes from having Medicaid, and that is the paying for the services. So there's Medicaid is health insurance, right? And health insurance is great. It's important to have, but it's the services and support that come with DDS. It's things that Chapel Haven is funded, again, Medicaid partially, right? And that is from the Medicaid as a service that is many times the most valuable benefit an individual will receive. And that is one of the reasons an ABLE account is so important, is an ABLE account can help an individual save and still qualify for Medicaid. Again, I have some nice little just overviews and graphs explaining a little bit of the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. So just, again, to overly simplify, SSI is Medicaid, SSDI is Medicare. You can absolutely have both. Medicaid is Husky, and Medicaid is the gateway to services. With that, unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over to Ray.
Thank you, Andrew. First, thank you. I'm excited to be here to talk to everyone about ABLE CT, the Treasurer's Program for ABLE in the state of Connecticut. Thank you to Chapel Haven for organizing this event, and also very happy to be presenting alongside Andrew. I'm a big fan of his and his knowledge. My name is Renaud Levesque. I'm the Deputy Chief Investment Officer at the State of Connecticut Office of the Treasurer. I have oversight for the CHET program, the 529 program for the state of Connecticut, the recently established ABLE program, or 529A, as well as various duties within the Pension Fund Management Division. It's been almost about a year for me to be at the state of Connecticut, so very excited to be part of the family here. And I also have a son in the community. So my son has Down syndrome, and this is almost also a labor of love for me as well. So I'm very excited to talk to you about that. And you know, my background is really 22 plus years in investment management across both the public and private sectors. So I'm really more of a finance guy, but with the 529 program and the 529A ABLE program, these are our Treasurer Wooden's marquee programs for the state of Connecticut and how he's trying to make a difference. And we'll talk a little bit about that. As you'll see on the next slide, Andrew talked a little bit about the history of ABLE. I talked a little bit about ABLE. And for Connecticut specifically, we all know that the law was established in 2014 that gave, that was the federal government established that. But for Connecticut, in 2015, the state legislature passed legislation allowing the state treasurer to implement the federal law in Connecticut. There was a different treasurer at the time, and we have a new treasurer, Treasurer Sean T. Wooden, who was elected in 2019, who came into Connecticut. And the first thing he did is made it a priority to get ABLE off the ground. And through a RFP process that we went through, an RFP process is really a competitive bid process that the state does for engaging in contracts. What we wanted to do is select the best partner for Connecticut and for the Connecticut residents. So in October 15th, Treasurer Wooden officially launched ABLE CT, and that's the savings program for ABLE in Connecticut. So a little quote from Sean, and for those who you probably well know who Sean T. Wooden is, he made a quote here, and I want to just mention it. It's well overdue for Connecticut to help individuals living with disability to achieve greater financial independence, expand self-reliance, and increase access to opportunities. And that's exactly what ABLE CT program will provide. Treasurer Wooden is very serious about this program and about making a difference in the lives of all residences of Connecticut. And hope to talk a little bit about that. In particular, the mission of Chapel Haven lends itself well for ABLE to provide this type of support to be able to allow residences to live normal lives. And we hope that the ABLE CT program will make a difference for this constituency here, as well as throughout the state. So let's talk a little bit about ABLE CT, and then I'll give you a little bit of the inside ball game of what's happening here. so that you have a better idea of all of the things that happen behind the scenes, beyond just going to the website. So the way Treasurer Wooden structured the program was to partner with the National ABLE Alliance. And you may not know who they are, but the National ABLE Alliance is a consortium of about 18 states, now with Connecticut, that all kind of group together to be able to provide an ABLE program in each individual respective state. The Alliance is one of the largest groups that have organized to do this, and every state can implement it their own way. But with the consortium, Connecticut gets the ability to leverage off of other states and other implementations to be able to offer the best program for persons with disabilities. The Alliance represents about 25% of the national ABLE eligible population right now. We hope that, and part of the Alliance allows Connecticut to be able to have a voice in enacting changes in legislation to be able to benefit the program for persons with disabilities. So, for example, there is a bill to raise the age limit, on ABLE eligible account owners, and that would help the program tremendously by allowing it to grow and to have more, to be able to be applicable to more individuals, particularly folks from the armed services. So, that's things that the Alliance helps us to kind of pull together our ideas to be able to, to keep up with what's happening and to advocate on the behalf of Connecticut. The other thing that ABLE-CT offers is high quality features. So it's low cost index based investment options, a checking account to be able to pay for eligible expenses, access your savings online. And the other thing that's important about ABLE-CT is that it allows folks to be able to not only access online, but to pick up the phone and call someone. And these days, a lot of services are going digital, and oftentimes it's hard to get someone on the phone. One thing about ABLE-CT is that if you call between hours of 9 and 5, Monday through Friday, you'll get someone and you'll be able to talk through any questions you may have about the program, about your eligibility, any questions about the investment options, checking. And we feel that that's very important. And in addition to that, it's multilingual. The last thing I'll talk about is account oversight and security. As you may hear, there's these days with everything that's going online, there's a lot of ability to not have good protections for account owners. And one thing that the Alliance, through the partner that implements the program, Census, does is they provide that account oversight to help account owners. So you can trust that there's multiple layers of account oversight and security. Last thing I already talked about is really the customer service. We try to make it accessible to all, the widest population that we can. And we feel that service is very superior in answering questions that you may have about ABLE-CT. And last thing is that our focus is really to deliver to Connecticut residents is the best in-class ABLE savings program. So one of the things that we felt was important is to make it easy to understand and use. So, and investing is it could be a challenging endeavor, particularly for folks who, folks may be familiar with 401ks, and, there's a lot of different investment options that you can choose from. But, with ABLE-CT, we make it very easy. So just look at 6 different risk-based investment options, and those investment options are catered for risk tolerance. So if you go from conservative to aggressive, you figure out where you want to be in that spectrum of investing your savings, and that is invested in the market with top tier investment managers, managers such as Vanguard, Charles Schwab, BlackRock, and Sallie Mae. And as I talked about before, there's a checking option that allows you to contribute to an FDIC insured checking account, and you get to use a debit card to be able to withdraw money for qualified disability expenses. We also think this is a very important option to be able to allow your money to grow, but also to access your money to pay for expenses. The last thing I'll talk about, which I've already kind of discussed, is really the user experience. And we want everyone to take a look at the AbleCT website. The URL is ct.savewithable.com. If you just type AbleCT in your web browser, you should be able to pull it up. And the website is very easy to navigate and to use. It only takes a couple of minutes to open up an account. And the thing that we want to do is make it easy to. It's as little as 15 minutes. It can be done online, but also you can call up. You can do it through paper as well. So for folks who are not comfortable with the technology, there are forms that you can access and download, and you can fill it out over paper and then mail that in. Same thing as you could also call someone on the support line, customer service line, and you can get that assistance that you may need. The other thing that we wanted to highlight here is this U-Gift, which is the ability to have friends and families make contributions to Able accounts. And it's a free, easy to use service that allows others to do that. And that could be done on the website itself. So we ask everyone who is interested to talk to your financial advisor about AbleCT. Firms such as Andrew, who provides the service, can help out, as well as others. But also visit the website and take a look. And we hope that you find it to be very easy to use, very easy to set up. And we feel that, and the Treasurer Wooden knows it will make a big difference in the lives of our community in Connecticut. With that, I'll pass it back over to Andrew.
Actually, Ray, real quick, we do have a question that came in. Who manages the fund, and can you let it grow, over the years, or are there restrictions about taking money out? Can it compound up to $100,000 of contributions or market value?
Okay, so I think the question is, who manages the fund, and are there restrictions on withdrawing the savings out? Is that the two questions?
Correct. And then it looks like there's a third that says, can it compound up to $100,000 of dollars of contributions or market value? Right.
Okay. So for the first question, it's a very good question. Thank you for asking. The fund management is done. Well, it's two parts of the answer. One, it's administered by the Census Record Keeping College Savings Program. It's a firm that administers the program for us, as well as the other states in the consortium. The actual investments are managed by the four firms that I mentioned earlier: Vanguard, BlackRock, Charles Schwab, and Sallie Mae. And those are blended portfolios, and those firms are, if you look on the website, you'll see the different allocations based on risk tolerance. And then you should, and there would be different weightings to those different investment managers. Those are index options that are high quality, and those firms are very, very reputable in the industry. Questions about restrictions. Your money will grow in those allocations over time. And you're able to choose the allocators. There are restrictions on how many changes you can make. I don't have the specific number to be able to quote, but there are some restrictions that you can't day trade in and out of these vehicles, but there are going to be restrictions. The money will compound the longer you leave it in, obviously, with the market. And if you're a long-term investor, that the assets will, over time diversify, but with respect to the time that you started. So if you have a long time horizon, it gives a lot more opportunity for the money for your savings to grow as you make contributions to it.
And I think piggyback. All right, yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
Jump in.
So it is 2 a year, although I find most people don't ever even move out of the investments other than that, right? Or more than 2 a year. I don't run into that being an issue. It's the same as the Chet, the 529. I will answer the question from DWR within the next part of the slide. The other thing I did want to address too is there's $100,000. When you get over 100,000, the payments for SSI are suspended. That is $100,000 balance. That's not contributions. And how the contributions can be spent is also something I'm going to talk about momentarily. So, Ray, did you have anything else? I'm sorry to steal the show.
No, you absolutely covered it, Andrew. That was the last part of the question. You're right. It is 2 times. And then the $100,000 is a limit. But your benefits from Andrew could probably talk about this a little bit better. The benefits are suspended or don't disappear. So there's not going to be a disadvantage or something that is a negative. Obviously, $100,000 is a lot of money to grow an account too. But there are some limits around that, and Andrew can talk more about it.
Yeah, Ray promised me that within 5 years, my $10,000 would be $100,000 through the stellar investment management of the state treasurer. Okay, glad this is being recorded. So, and Ray, do you want to answer that one question for you before we get started? The account management fees and the account opening fees.
Yeah. There are a number of that could be a longer discussion, but there are some fees that are going to be applied to the account with some based on the options that you choose. I'll come back and see if I can answer that in a couple minutes after you could go on. I'll answer that at the end of the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So an ABLE account is also called a 529A. And if you've heard 529 before, that's because the CHET in Connecticut, the College Savings, Connecticut Higher Education Trust, is called a 529. It was modeled after a very similar regulation. That's also one of the reasons I believe that we have this age limit. The disability had to occur prior, right? Because it was really, for the individuals who wanted to save when an individual was younger, again, as an alternative to college. And I think it's rooted in that benefit. So what's really nice about a 529A, an ABLE account, is money you take out. It doesn't impact any benefits, SSI, SNAP, HUD. Additionally, if you have $50,000 in an ABLE account, then it does not count towards your $1,600 limit. And again, I'm going to use the $1,600 limit because in Connecticut, that is Medicaid. And we always go with the lowest common denominator as far as qualifying for benefits as a general rule. So again, we've done a little bit overview of an ABLE. Something that I do get a lot of questions on is what is considered a qualified disability expense. So this is what you are able to take money out of an ABLE account for. Now, a really important note, and this is the same for college savings checks, and it's the same for ABLEs, is it's only the money that it makes has to be used for higher education or what's called a qualified disability expense. So if you put in $10,000 into an ABLE and Ray grew it to $20,000 in a month, then I'm able to take out the first $10,000, use it on whatever I want. I could go to Vegas. The other $10,000, the money I made, that has to be used for a qualified disability expense. And you can see the list here. And what I can say is, if you can justify it as a reason, right, and it's for the individual, then it's probably okay. I've really only run into one instance where I felt it was not okay. And actually, the last time I mentioned this, I think that person was actually on the call, but it was a provider wanted to build a new gazebo and a ramp for the gazebo. And it was a large population. And that really wasn't just for the individual, right? The gazebo, it benefited everyone at the church. So I said, that really wasn't the reason. If it was a ramp for the individual and they had a wheelchair, okay. But building a gazebo, that's like saying I need a new deck. I don't know that quite qualifies. But for the most part, I find a lot of people get very stuck on what it can be used for. It can absolutely be used for basically anything at Chapel Haven. I don't think anything at Chapel Haven it wouldn't cover, so I do want to say that. You'd have to stretch really hard to find something that it can't be used for. So please don't not use the money. Definitely go spend it at the Chapel Haven gift shop. They didn't tell me to say that. I'm actually don't even know if they have a gift shop. I'm just assuming. Okay.
Andrew, one other question. We talked about what you can take money out to use. There was a question, can you transfer money from a check to an ABLE account?
Yeah, so yes, you can. And I was going to get to that, but I'll answer it now. You can transfer up to the limits. So if you can do $15,000 a year into an ABLE account, you can move $15,000 from a check into an ABLE account. So you are able to do that. Now you are able to do a little bit more if an individual is working. So, but you are still stuck with the limits. If you have 50,000 in a check, you can't just move it all to an ABLE account.
That's correct.
Lisa, so to clarify, it is the total max, it is the market value. So it is not the contribution. Sorry, I thought I answered that. So the 100,000 is market value. Who is eligible? Individuals with significant disabilities that was onset prior to age 26. So what this means is the disability occurred prior to age 26. I'll give you a great example. I have an ABLE account myself. I have not yet transferred mine to Connecticut, mostly because I'm just too busy. I've been too busy. So mine's with Massachusetts, Fidelity. And I was diagnosed with autism at 28. I am still able to open an ABLE account because you're born with autism. So anyone with autism, no matter when it was diagnosed, they had the disability at an onset prior to age 26. If an individual is on SSI, SSDI, that makes them automatically eligible. If you are not on SSI or SSDI, then you need to have a letter from a doctor, which is what I did, you know, certifying the disability. And I don't think that's ever even questioned. It's probably not even checked by anyone. But you are supposed to submit a letter. In Connecticut, it's one letter. Certain other states, it's different. So it can be established by the beneficiary, which is the ABLE account holder, the person with a disability, parent, legal guardian, agent under a durable power of attorney. So ABLE account contributions are made post-tax. Again, if you're familiar with the CHET and a 529, very, very similar. They are not deductible for federal income tax purposes. In Connecticut, ABLE account contributions are currently not deductible, but you are able to contribute to a CHET, and you are able to then move it into an ABLE account right thereafter. You are able to do that in Connecticut, whether you're moving to Connecticut's ABLE account, hopefully, or if you're moving to another ABLE account. So there was some legislation pending last year on to make ABLE contributions tax deductible at a state level. With COVID and the crisis, that bill never got anywhere, but that is something that we're going to keep an eye on in the next legislative session in Connecticut, especially now that Connecticut does have its own ABLE account. A very nice feature is the money does grow tax-free for what we called qualified disability expenses, which again is essentially anything that you can justify. I mean, I like to hold a contest for people to try to come up with something that's not a justifiable expense. It almost certainly is, right? It's a very, very liberal definition, you know, cell phone, computer, transportation, housing, even clothing and sensory, you know, obviously anything at Chapel Haven, right? We've been through that. So just the list is very long. I really encourage parents not to overthink it as well.
Andrew,
So,
oh,
yes.
sorry, a question came in about, can parents be the beneficiaries? And is there a penalty if the account holder passes away?
So currently in Connecticut, you can make the beneficiary again whoever you want. However, the state has the right to be paid back first for any benefits that they've paid. So if the state has paid under Medicaid an individual for, $200,000 and there's $100,000 in the ABLE account, the state will get paid back first. But there can be a beneficiary named. For example, I have a client, I have an ABLE account. I'm not on Medicaid, right? So my beneficiary would get the money first. To answer another question, DWR, vacation, again, as long as you can warrant that, I think I could warrant it, right? Who doesn't need some relaxation in these times? So again, if you can justify it in your head, then I think you're good. So absolutely. I feel, vacation would count, or at least parts enough to it. And remember, it's only the amazing growth that Ray has guaranteed and promised me from my ABLE account that is really going to count towards needing to be a qualified expense. The money you put in can be used for whatever you would like. And if you move, Connecticut is more than happy to keep your money in CT ABLE. If you're in another state, Connecticut does not have a restriction on you opening in Connecticut. So if you're in the lovely state of Massachusetts and you want to open one in Connecticut because the investment expenses are lower, and that is true, then you are more than welcome able to do that. So you can keep it, you can move to another state. There's only a few states like Tennessee where you can't open one unless you live there, but that's not really relevant and too technical anyway. So I think I answered the majority of this already. And this is, again, qualified disability expenses. You don't pay any taxes on the growth. It's income tax deferred. It comes out tax-free. And again, if you do take out money not for a qualified disability expense above your contributions, that is the only time where it's subject to income tax and a 10% penalty. So once again, your contributions come out tax-free, and it's only the gains that you have made that are subject to the qualified disability expense and the 10% tax penalty. And a good question is, who reviews it? I'm pretty sure nobody, Catherine, but I don't think that means that they can't. So Ray might actually be able to answer this, but if you're using the debit card too, similar to a credit card, right? It keeps tracks of where you do your purchases. So it's pretty easy to say, hey, okay, Best Buy bought a computer, right? Or if it's the gas station, well, it's probably gas, right? So it's not that hard to keep track of it. You should. I have not known anyone who's had this questionnaire reviewed. But again, just because you haven't been audited by the IRS doesn't mean that you shouldn't, document either.
And just so the audience knows, the question was, when you go to take the money out, who would review it or want to see the reason for taking the money out? That was the question.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Ray, do you have something to add?
No, I don't. That's a good question. But yeah, I mean, anecdotally, not the treasurer's position here, but it all should be on the up and up, and everyone should have some kind of documentation for it. It's just probably good practice to have.
Of course. So if I have a business, when I deduct my business expenses, I have documentation, but I don't need to show that to the IRS unless I'm audited. That doesn't mean that I'm not doing everything above board. But like I said, I encourage people to be a little bit more liberal on the definitions. We have these accounts so people can save with disabilities, right? We want to encourage saving, and we want to encourage saving on disability-related expenses. So as long as we're doing it within the spirit of what it was intended for, I feel really comfortable recommending it that way. You can put in $15,000 per year into an ABLE. unless the beneficiary is working and not contributing to a retirement plan, it's above 26,000 a year or so that they are able to put in, and it is a calendar year. Options for opening an ABLE account.
Hey, Andrew,
Yes.
1 second. There was a question on opening account that there was an account fee question on Able CT.
Yes.
So as you're about to start this, let me just give the answer.
Perfect.
It was a question from DWR. And the cost for the Able account, Able CT, is $45 paid quarterly. If you have electronic statements, and electronic statements make it a little bit cheaper, so you save on that. If you want to get paper statements, it will be $15 per quarter or $60 annually for just the account itself. And then if you have the debit card, I think there's a slight fee of $2, per year. So I have the information. The information is on the website, but I just want to give you that information for DWR.
So, and do we have any more? So Lisa, the 15,000 per cap per person. No, so that's a great question. Lisa asked, there's a 15,000 per cap per person. So she asked if it's a parent, could it be 30,000 a year? And with an ABLE account, everything is centered on the beneficiary of the ABLE account, who is the individual with the disability. Also, you are only allowed one ABLE account open at a time. So you can't have, like a very common with college savings plans, a grandparent and a parent or somebody else open multiple checks. So you can only have one ABLE account, and it's the total for the individual with the disability is what matters. So the cap is per the person with the disability. That was a great question, Lisa.
Did you see the one above that too, Andrew, about can a parent open an account for their child, but the parent retain control of the spending from the ABLE account?
Yeah, don't tell your child and hide the debit card. I mean, that's I mean that's the answer, right? I mean, it's, again, assuming you have all the legal permissions and authorities to be able to do that, right? If you have a bank account for someone and you don't tell them, then then there's nothing they can do. However, I will add that I do think an ABLE account is a great way to help teach an individual maybe some spending. And I do find that a lot of parents should be using an ABLE account and the debit card as an opportunity, knowing that they won't be around forever, knowing it's good to try to teach some financial independence, which I am a big fan of. So I find, given that they're able to track what the individual's spending, it can be a very limited dollar amount. So, you can control how much the individual's spending by loading the debit card. So not all the money in the ABLE account is available on the debit card. You have to load it on the debit card. Correct, Ray?
Yes, the
Okay.
money comes. Yeah, the money comes from the savings, the investment. So you can move it into the checking option, and then they will be available to you to be able to use the debit card option. But for those account owners who want to just use the checking option, that's also available to you as well. So if they are working and they're not really taking advantage of or they have allocated to the risk-based portfolios, they could also use the checking option just for their usual daily expenses.
Exactly. So, DWR, great question. Could inheritance be earmarked to an ABLE account? The answer is yes, but it should never be. That's a poor idea. And I could go into why if we have time. Again, I think my wife tells me just because I can do something doesn't mean I should. So I think we should get to that if we have some time at the end. Again, funding an ABLE account, so you can roll over from a chat or from other states, ABLE 529, ongoing contributions, check, direct deposit. I don't think the Treasurer's Office takes Bitcoin yet, but for the most part, pretty much anything or any way you can, contribute the money to them, they're eligible. Some employers are, if an employer wants to work with, again, somebody like me to help set up automatic deposits for employees into ABLE accounts, for example, we offer that to our employees. They're able to do that. So there's lots of ways to be able to fund an ABLE account. You just go online, direct deposit, send it in, however.
Yeah, and I'll just make a quick comment here. Yeah, the rollovers are allowed in the ABLE CT program. One thing that the Treasurer's Office wants to do is we want to make ABLE CT more widely used in Connecticut, and that allows us to be able to advocate on your behalf with the legislature in Connecticut to be able to get more benefits for the ABLE program. So we encourage you to consider thinking about it, and you're opening up your account in Connecticut, but also thinking about rolling over if you're in another state to Connecticut to be able to have your voice count, and allows the treasurer to be able to do that within the state.
And Elaine asked, can a person with an ABLE account, even if they have another account in which the SSI funds are deposited? The answer is absolutely. A lot of times the deposit with SSI, right, is a separate bank account. And for example, if you're a payee, having an ABLE account, is, again, a different type of savings account. So absolutely can have multiple accounts. Good question. So again, as far as opening an ABLE account goes, if you're transferring from another state into Connecticut, and again, Connecticut will have the lowest fees, right? Do you know if we charge out-of-state residents more if they want to use Connecticut's ABLE? Or is it,
No,
I think
that
it's the
was a
same
question.
for everyone, correct?
Yeah, that was a question that I think Richard asked as well, so glad you brought it up. Yeah, the same fees for both in-state and out-of-state. There are no differences.
Which is a great question because, some states like Ohio, for example, do charge a little bit more if you're an out-of-state resident. So Connecticut does have some very low expenses, the lower than really any of the other states that are available to us. So you are able to move from another state to Connecticut's. Just keep in mind that you can't have two open at the same time. So you open one and you fill out some very simple paperwork. One thing I find is investment companies, one of the things where they're the most helpful to you is when you're trying to give them money. So I find that if you have an issue where you're trying to move money from another state into CT ABLE, I find them to be very supportive of that. So if anyone's ever moved from an IRA or retirement plan over, then, it's very easy. Elaine asked, do you need a financial advisor to navigate the ABLE account options? As a financial advisor, I would say no. I would say if you're not sure what to do, I would just pick the most conservative investment option or cash if you haven't invested before. The nice thing about CT ABLE is you don't have to pick all these options, right? There's, cash, like a checking or a savings account. There's conservative, moderate, and aggressive. The more risk you take, the more money you'll make. And again, if you're looking to, grow it a lot and you don't need to touch it for a long time, right? Similar to if you're younger, you'd invest more aggressively, you can be more aggressive. If you simply want an open and ABLE account, more for the benefits of protecting your assets, put it in an FDIC insured, checking savings account. I will say that there's, less than a few advisors in the entire state of Connecticut, including myself, who I think could even speak to the pros and cons of an ABLE account, 3 or 4. But we've made it so you don't need to talk to people like me about an ABLE account. And when I am advising individuals on ABLE accounts, it's more about the parts that we're talking about today, how to open one, why to open one. The actual investment options are so simple, I actually don't even need to advise my clients on them. And Connecticut's done a great job of making that really simple. So I'm going to go over just a really quick couple minutes on special needs trusts. This does answer a question from DWR. We do not have an attorney with us today, which means this presentation will be a lot shorter and in a good way. But no, so I bring this up because there's really two types of special needs trust. There's what's called a first party, and that means it's an individual's money. They're approved by the state. They're very regulated. They're a pain. Now, the reason an individual has, oh, and by the way, being a pain is a technical legal term in the financial world. So in case anyone's curious. So, but a first party special needs trust is when an individual has the money first. So let's say that Ray and I are discussing ABLE accounts and Ray takes me to dinner, okay? And we're discussing who wants to pay for dinner. And Ray gives me $100 because he took me to Capitol Grill. And I give the waiter the check to pay for dinner. Well, that was my money. So that would be a first party. So even though I paid, for dinner, he gave me the money first, I touched the money. So for example, this is very common when there's a lawsuit or a law settlement or money's left to an individual money's left to an individual without setting up a trust otherwise. They have to do what's called a first party special needs trust. And these, just like the ABLE account, do have a Medicaid clawback. But they also have lots of other not nice features. Trusts pay higher taxes. There's trust accounting. They have to be approved by the state. There's oversight. They're a mess. They're a nightmare. So when it comes to a first party special needs trust, right, it's always better not to use my money, right? So if, again, we're at dinner Capitol Grill, I want to get Ray to pay for dinner and I don't ever want to touch it at all. So that would be what we would call a third party special needs trust. So a third party would be the example where Ray just pays for dinner directly. He uses the treasurer's corporate card. He pays for dinner. I never took the money. So that's better. It's always better to use somebody else's money to pay for dinner is the way I look at it. Now, one of the reasons it's better beyond the flexibility is there is no payback provision, right? Because it was never the individual's money in the first place. So it's usually less expensive. It's the way when a parent or somebody is looking to leave money to an individual with a disability, a third party special needs trust is the way to do it. Not saying that first party special needs trusts don't have a place. They absolutely do. But if they can be avoided, then they should be. Now, one last thing about trusts is, and I really like this slide. I like this image. I just think it's funny more than anything else. But one, but one other really important thing is when it comes to third-party special needs trusts, there's two kinds. There is one that is in your will, and then there is one that is created separate from your will. I am making an overgeneralization because I am not an attorney and therefore I am allowed to do that. You almost always want a separate document. It's usually a little extra money with an attorney, but it is so much cheaper in the long run and it's a lot more flexibility and a lot better. What I like to tell parents is, this is one of the most important things you'll ever do because you won't be around when it matters for when it's being set up. So I find it so important to make sure that it's done correctly. So it's a little less expensive to, in the will, say, after I pass, set up a special needs trust for so-and-so. What I find is a lot better is you're able to set up the special needs trust now, and you can specify the terms, you can specify the details, you can specify who will manage the money, who will do all of these things. The trust doesn't need to be funded. For all intents and purposes, beyond maybe the extra few $100s or a little more you might pay the attorney, you would never know the difference because it's still only funded after something happens to you. Another example is if you have more than one person who wants to leave money to a special needs beneficiary, then if it's a what's called a testamentary trust in the will, if you had 6 people, and I use 6 because it's a real example, I've seen it, you would need 6 separate special needs trusts, right? Instead, what I usually find is, well, ask the rich uncle or the grandparent to pay for the special needs trust, then you can use it too. I always, again, if you can't tell, I'm a big fan of using other people's money when possible. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons to have what's called a standalone special needs trust. And, you know, there's reasons to have all of these other types of trusts. They exist. I am making an overgeneralization. Now, an ABLE account is not an alternative to a special needs trust. They do have lots of commonalities, but an ABLE account is easy to open. You can open it in a couple minutes, right? And it empowers the individual. When it comes to any of these other types of trusts, the individual needs to go and ask for money. The individual can't buy groceries, right? They can't, you know, have any really sort of true financial independence. That to me is one of the best features about an ABLE account, is the individual, the ABLE account holder, can decide what they want to save for, what they want to do it for, right? When it comes to a special needs trust, the trustee could say, I don't want to pay for your new computer. I don't want to pay for your food. I don't want to, you know, pay for those things. So, you know, that is one of the really nice things about an ABLE account. So I think that everyone, if they're eligible, should open an ABLE account. And if you're thinking about whether you should open one or not, you just should. It's never a bad idea to save money. So I really strongly recommend just getting started, saving money, open an ABLE account with the, again, state of Connecticut. They make it really easy. Also, a lot of states like Ohio won't even let you do paper. It's only online. So I do like that Connecticut does have the option for people to be able to do a paper application if they would like to, but they do have online as well, and it's very easy. It's never a bad idea to save money. The trusts are a little bit more complicated and a longer discussion, but you can have, most people who have a trust should also have an ABLE account, but I think everyone who qualifies should have an ABLE account. Saving money tax-free is never a bad thing.
Oh, Andrew, you came in almost right at 7:30 there.
Perfect.
You have it down to a science. So Christy, how are we doing? Do we have some questions?
Lisa, just SSI should technically, because it just suspends SSI. Medicaid is up to, I don't know, some level like 400,000. However, Lisa, I will say that if you're very concerned about funding an ABLE account and you're very concerned about getting over that $100,000, you should probably be talking to financial advisor / estate planning attorney to consider other options as well, such as third-party special needs trusts and the payback provision. Not that you shouldn't have an ABLE account, but again, given all the questions about that, especially if it's a concern, you know, it shouldn't be as much of a concern, if that makes sense. You know, spend the money on something. If you want ideas, I mean, I could give you plenty of ways to spend money too.
Yeah, so we did well. Andrew and Ray both incorporated all the questions throughout. So if there's no final questions, then we thank you all.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Catherine,
Thank you.
having us.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
Email it. You can give people my email if you'd like to, if they just have more questions, or if anybody does on ABLE account. I'm always happy to answer. I consider it part of my advocacy, not, you know, my business. I don't try to sell you an ABLE account. I just think they're great, and everyone should have one who's eligible.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say is that if you have any feedback from anyone on ct.savewithable.com, we'll always be happy to take a look at and listen to feedback to make it better. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Okay, thanks so much. Have a great holiday, everybody.
Thank you.